I've been pushing myself to keep exploring Boston instead of defaulting to staying at home. Maybe it's coping, maybe it's growth, but I'd rather see it as agency. This week, I pushed further, testing the subway, weighing memberships, and realizing I can't let fear or frustration shrink my world. But before I get into the recent Boston trips and how I was more conscious with my budget and finally tested the subway, be sure to give this video a like, comment what do you think about your area's subway if you have one, subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations, and last but certainly not least, feel free to join me at the Zillennial Nexus Point Discord where we can keep this conversation going. Link will be in the description below. Alright, so first outing since the last time I published a video, which, yes, is going to be less frequent now because I need to go down to 3 days a week. The day after almost asking out that woman at Burger King, I walked the Rose Kennedy Parkway, mapping out the route from South Station to the Aquarium because I'm still considering the aquarium membership. Frankly, I'm torn between that or the Museum of Science. But it's probably not going to be for a while because, as I record this, next weekend I have back to back movie days. Saturday I am seeing Bone Lake, and Sunday, Avatar 2 re release because it's playing in IMAX 3D. But anyway, after confirming walking to the aquarium was possible from South Station, I ventured over to the Boston Common and just passed time until lunch when I meant to get a single cheeseburger for using free points, and then take advantage of the $1.69 any size fries and $1 any size soft drink. But it turned out I could only use one deal per transaction, and they had to be an hour apart, so no making three separate transactions in one go and getting my meal for $2.88. TLDR, I skipped the fries because they cost more than the money I had in the budget, and I redeemed the points for a free cheeseburger and then bought a small soda. I ate it quickly and was on my way back out to the Boston Common. And along the way, I saw the woman I had talked to the previous day at Burger King, but she was at work, so I decided not to bother her. Anyway, before my train left South Station, I checked out the subway fare machines at there because I was planning to do the subway exploration that I'll get into in a moment. And then on Saturday, I went out to see one battle after another, but the train was delayed, not just getting to my station. At the second to last stop before South Station, it actually went backwards for a bit. But thankfully, it's just because it was rerouting to different tracks. But this whole situation reminded me why I always leave early. So I try to take at least two trains before my show time. So if I miss one somehow, I can catch another. But I'm always at least 15 minutes early because there's an outbound train that comes through 15 minutes before the inbound train. Well, I walked around the Boston Common and then I went to see one battle after another where for the first time since I started going to this AMC, I had people sitting on either side of me, like right next to me. There was this woman on my left and this guy on my right, and they both used their phones during the movie. Not for very long, but still, they took out their phones during the movie. The woman on my left even took Instagram story pics for of the screen, just like the one I sat next to at It Ends With Us last year. And may I remind you, both of these people saw the do not take out your phone reminders before the previews ended. They saw the exact same thing I did, and they still chose to break those rules. Now, I don't blame the phones themselves like YouTubers such as Dapper Dev would do. I blame the people ignoring rules that were clearly spelled out before the movie began. Let me say that again. They ignored the rules that were clearly spelled out. It didn't ruin the movie for me though, because again, they were really quick about it. But I still mentally labeled the woman on my left not romantically viable, which is why I did not bother trying to strike up a conversation about the movie we'd both just seen. Now, you'd think for conversation material, yeah, that would be great. Except she took out her phone, so I knew I wanted nothing to do with her. That situation aside, I had a couple small wins in human interaction that day as well. First, I went to McDonald's for lunch, got my $6 McDouble meal deal, and when I was able to find a seat at a booth next to an old guy, because I did not want to have to dodge wasps outside like I did last time I ate McDonald's in the Boston Common. I asked him, is that seat taken? He said no. I immediately took that seat so I could dip my chicken McNuggets in the buffalo sauce without having to worry about fumbling it. You know, we had a good chat along the way. I may have vented about my knee feeling a little off from sitting in the theater seat for about 3.5 hours, which is why I usually walk around as much as possible before I go into the theater because I'm going to be sitting for a while anyway. May as well get some steps in now. Anyway, we had a good chat, and then I went out to the Boston Common to sit down and write my review because I wasn't going to sit at the McDonald's while writing my review because competition for a table to sit down at is fierce. Now, out in the suburbs, it's not a big deal because it's usually not as crowded. But in downtown Boston, yeah, I would not linger at a fast food restaurant table if I can help it. Anyway, while I was writing and proofreading the review, I did joke to this woman sitting at the next bench on my right about squirrels and how they were cute and cuddly, but I didn't blame her for not wanting them that close because of Malcolm in the Middle in the episode where Craig got bit by a squirrel and Lois and the Lucky Aid crew had to hunt it down so that they could prove it didn't have rabies, and then Craig could avoid the very painful rabies injection I'm going to spare you the graphic details of. I kind of wish I had gone over to the bench she was sitting at and then kept the conversation going by seeing if she'd proofread my review. Don't worry, it was a spoiler-free one. You can follow me at ZN Movie Reviews. That's Zillennial Nexus Movie Plus TV Reviews, if you want to read what I wrote. But yeah, I decided to get the review done and then be able to get up and take the train home, which I'm really glad I got there early because these three guys literally came up to me and asked me for help with the commuter rail timing because they needed to get to their Sox game, the Red Sox game. I told them that the next train on their line wasn't until 5 o'clock and that the subway would probably be a better idea. I redirected them to someone who would know more about it. Then they came back to me and then I told them based on my research, because I'd been researching the subway, that there's a red line station they could get on and they could take the red line to Park Street at the Boston Common, where they could transfer to a green line at no extra charge, and then they could take the green line over to Kenmore, which would get them a lot closer to the Fenway Park, a lot more quickly than the commuter rail train that left an hour after the game began. So I located the subway station for myself and for them, and I really hope they made it to their Red Sox game. But yeah, I continued helping them even though they started the boarding for my train because I'm not going to just give up on them that easily. Besides, I needed to figure out where the Red Line South Station stop was so that I could use it later, which I ended up doing the very next day because although I originally planned to just stay home and play video games because my mom is out of town, which means I have no psychotic cleaning frenzy to hide from, the call to adventure was just too strong. That and I already paid $10 for the weekend pass, which admittedly I got my money's worth for on Saturday alone, but I actually wanted to test the subway before I committed to using it long term. So when I got to South Station, I bought my Charlie ticket, and I took the red line to the green line via the Park Street stop, and then I took the green line to the Prudential Center. The experience was honestly not fun, and it would have been a lot worse if it weren't for the fact that everyone around me was so nice about answering questions I had, or when they saw that I was clearly suffering from the problems I was having with the motion of the subway cars. It wasn't motion sickness, it was more that I was being jerked around by gravity and the motion of the train car, and physically strained by the stops and starts. I felt like I was literally the only person reacting while everyone else was unbothered. No, really, even when I was seated on the red line heading to the green line, I still shook when the red line departed. But again, fellow passengers and MBTA employees were all really kind, patient, and helpful with my first time jitters and questions. Like on the green line, someone actually moved out of the way so I could have a little more standing room or have a wall to fall back on. But I still clung to the railing for dear life, and with both hands, too. Most people just hold on with one hand. No, I had to use both hands. Like the way that the subway cars shook me around made me feel like Woody in the Pizza Planet truck in the first Toy Story movie. And the way I held on to the railing was like when Chuck Norris was dangling from a helicopter ladder several hundred feet away from the land over the ocean. He mentioned in one of his books that they had to pry his fingers off the ladder when he got back to land. And honestly, I was starting to wonder if maybe that would end up being the case for me. But thankfully, I was able to just let go when I arrived at the Prudential Center, and I was able to make my way there and go to Dunkin', where I redeemed points for a free donut and bought a water bottle. My hands were still shaky, but the staff there was really cool about hearing me talk about my first time on the subway and how they were really understanding about it, you know? Well, after spending time at the Prudential Center, I rode the Green Line back despite my nerves, and this ticket mishap where I bought a ticket for two rides, but it said invalid, and so I just was like, screw it, and bought another ticket with just the one ride this time because I wanted to get back to the Boston Common for lunch, and more importantly, I wanted to continue testing the subway, and honestly, I just want to get myself used to it because realistically, it's going to be the better way for getting to the Museum of Science than just walking there. But yeah, I'm also glad that I got on that subway because I met this middle aged woman and her elderly mother who were likely tourists based on the brochure that they had. And so I helped point them to where they needed to go to get to the Boston Tea Party Ship Museum, which I walked by the previous Sunday. I'll throw a picture that I took of one of the ships up there. But I decided to apply my research and help them get there because pretty much it was going back the way I came. So once I confirmed which subway car to look for, I led them on to the one that was headed to Park Street. I could have gotten off at Boylston, and I still would have been at the Boston Common. That's probably the one I'd want to get off on because it's a lot closer to the AMC. But this time, I went all the way to Park Street on that subway car, guiding the mother-daughter duo of tourists as far as the Red Line transfer to the Park Street Red Line stop so that they could get to the South Station and then walk to the museum they were headed to. It was a surreal shift from learner to guide in less than a day. So I guess it is pretty easy to figure out. Hopefully, it'll be just as easy to get used to the sensation because my sister, who's been helping answer questions about all this as well, said that it does take some getting used to. So there's that. Anyway, this time I decided to use the $5 reward I had from joining Sal's Pizza loyalty program and went to Sal's Pizza for lunch. I decided to have one of their 7-inch personal size pepperoni pizzas, though down the line, when I don't have reward dollars to spend, I'm gonna go for their $6 meal deal, which is a slice of pizza from their 19-inch, which is a quarter of a 19-inch pizza, and a large drink, assuming the Tremont Street location offers that. For all I know, they might not offer because it said fountain soda, but they only have bottled soda. Either way, I can get a cherry Pepsi there. And it expands my options for pizza at the Boston Common because at South Station right now, most of the times I've seen the Regina Pizzeria, it's looked like they're closed. I know they're renovating the section that has that in the McDonald's. Kind of weird, but we'll see. I know because I went back there after my Boston Common walk, because I decided after guiding those three guys the previous day to the subway that I'm not going to let past bad experiences, like being called Jeffy's bad word for declining to buy someone something at the McDonald's, dictate my choices. Now, I'm probably going to limit myself to things that I can't get elsewhere, like I said in my last video, which right now all I can think of is Cinnabon and Auntie Anne's. I'll get back to you on what happens with that. But yeah, after all that, I just went home and I realized that across these outings, I faced my frustrations and fear without letting it shrink my world. Like how the subway is opening things up for me now, even though there are some parts of it that are going to be down this month. I can spend $2.40 to go anywhere in the system. No distance penalty, transfers included. Huge payoff in reducing wear and tear on my feet and my shoes. I still burned over 1,900 calories that day. It'll be much easier to get to the Museum of Science, at least once the North Station to Medford/Tufts line is back up and running. That's the one that they're shutting down next weekend to do some work, which I can respect. You know, they need to do this kind of maintenance sometimes. And I happen to be a weekender. They probably chose the weekend because they didn't want to shut it down during when people had work. But yeah, my willingness to take the subway also expands my world so that I can use AMC at Assembly Row in Somerville, which is right off the Orange Line, as a backup choice if something goes wrong with AMC at the Boston Common and I really want to see my movie in IMAX or Dolby. On top of that, The blue line allows me to go all the way to Revere Beach, so I have that option next summer, and I'll get to see where they filmed Free Guy. Great movie, by the way, I'd recommend checking it out. They filmed some of the beach scenes at Revere Beach, so now I can just take the blue line and get there. Either way, I am less dependent on long, punishing walks, and depending on how I feel down the line, I might decide to just take the red line to Park Street and then not have to walk through the city to get to the Boston Common. I can just walk around the Common, the public garden, and then only have to cross the street to the other side of Tremont Street for my movie, lunch, or dinner. You get the idea. Anyway, what I need to answer now is whether I'm going to sign up for the Aquarium membership or the Museum of Science. The subway makes the Museum of Science a lot more viable, while the aquarium is cheaper from the get-go, and it negates the need to take the subway. I know because I looked up transit directions from South Station to the aquarium on the Apple Maps app, and it literally just said, walk from South Station to the aquarium. But that's decision for another day, so I'm gonna wrap it up here for the video. You let me know in the comments what you think about all this. Again, if you have a subway where you live, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Be sure to also give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for cultural commentary and rants from a man caught between generations. And last but certainly not least, feel free to join me at the Zillennial Nexus Point Discord. Link will be in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.